Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sisters in the Round. Sisters in the Round is dedicated to fostering an inclusive and empowering community within the theater industry, specifically for the intergenerational Black women. Its vision extends beyond traditional professional spaces and aims to create a vibrant community playground where informal and casual conversations can flourish. Hello, everyone. My name is Lauren Dixon. I am a Spelman class of 2021 graduate, and I'm currently getting my Master's of Fine Arts at the California Institute of Arts in Lighting Design. And I'm very excited to be having this conversation with a role model and a woman who I've had the privilege of working with and assisting under, Miss Kathy A. Perkins.
Thank you, Lauren, for having me. And thank you for working with me in Pittsburgh. That was great. I really appreciate it.
I love that. So I would love if we could just start with a little history about you, Kathy, and your entire career.
My entire career?
Your entire career, just the major highlights of your career.
Well, let's say I started out at Howard University. My freshman year, my best friend, who was a sophomore in lighting, I was doing a practicum class where, you had to take lighting, costume sets, and do everything on the show. And I'd been assisting him on lighting for an Alice Childress play called Wine in the Wilderness. And we were sitting backstage, and out of the blue, he said, "What are you going to do with a BFA in acting?" Mm-hmm. And I said, "I'm going to go to Broadway. What do you think?" So mind you, this is 1973. And he said, "I think you would be better working backstage. I've seen you hang in focus lights. You're really good at that. And if you go into lighting, you'll always work. You wouldn't be a waitress. And there's not enough work for Black women, And so he convinced me to go into lighting. Plus, he said there's a lot of jobs. There was a place on campus where I could work and make a lot of money. So that was the first incentive. But then I fell in love with lighting. And, the rest is history. I changed my major to lighting or technical theater at that time at Howard. Went on to grad school, and I had wonderful mentors at Howard, both in my department and at the touring house I worked in. So, that's how I got started. If it hadn't been for that one little conversation, I don't know, I'd probably be a starving actor someplace. I don't know.
This is true. And we don't want to be starving. So I have a two-part question. As a Spelman grad, and I have experienced a conservatory and now an experimental program, with coming out of Howard and University of Michigan, correct, for your grad program, what value has your HBCU education had on your career? And then how important do you think a classical training in theatrical design is for the upcoming generation of designers?
I think you need both. I mean, when I was at Howard, and I think we may have discussed this, one of the downside was that I did not get the theoretical aspects of design that I would have liked to have gotten. I got a lot of practical experience, and which really, helped me in the long run, because when I got to grad school, I could do things that my colleagues couldn't do. They could draft better than me and stuff, but I knew how to, I could light a show much better than them because I had all that experience. Mm-hmm. And also for me, going to an HBCU, it just gave me the confidence that I don't think I would have gotten had I gone to a PWI, a predominantly white institution. Because, at Howard, we were told, "Oh, girl, you can do this. Don't even think about it. You got this. Don't even worry about it." So there was a certain level of confidence that I felt being at Howard the whole time, and particularly a woman. And even at Howard at the time I was there were other Black women in lighting. So for me, it wasn't a big deal. But when I decided to go to grad school, my advisors and the guy who's the director of the touring house said, "Well, we need to have a conversation because, here, everybody's Black. When you get to Michigan, you're going to be like the only Black person there." Mm-hmm. People are going to look at you differently and all that stuff. And so all of that was true. Michigan was great for me. It was, like I said, the first semester was hard because I just did not have the technical draft. I just could not draft. Mm-hmm. As you know, that's such an important part of lighting. I mean, back then it was hand drafting. I didn't have vectorworks. Everything was by hand. So it was a real struggle for me. But, I got through it, and it was a good program. And I think you need that. You really need that. I mean, I took costume class. I took a scene design class. I took all the classes that really paid off for me as a lighting designer.
I agree. I definitely have been learning that in my continued graduate experience, where I was like, oh, having my HBCU, having like all of the knowledge from Spelman has been really great for my, design identity.
Right.
But needing those, the field is still operating under, the drafting guidelines and how so you do need both. So I find that to be really interesting. So my next question is, what we have had prior conversations about women shifting kind of away from theatrical lighting and working in like a myriad of fields. I'm curious, what keeps you coming back to the theater specifically as a lighting designer?
Well, I never left theater. So I've always been here. I've always loved live theater. I mean, it's something about live theater that you just can't find doing, TV or film. It's immediate. It's either you get it right the first time or you don't get it right. With film, it's like, okay, let's take this shoot. Oh, let's come back and redo it. You don't do that with theater, and that's the part I love. And I just love being in a space with people. I mean, I don't know. To me, it's more of a people, art form than TV and film. You don't always get to see people. Well, not that I've done much TV or film, but I've sat in on film shoots and stuff like that. And it's like, it doesn't do anything for me. I know the money, I'd probably be a lot richer if I'd gone into film or architectural lighting, but something about the immediacy of the art is what, attracts me. And I love the stories that are being told in theater. And I love to see how the director can, shape a play. I mean, I've done A Raisin in the Sun, God knows how many times more.
Right.
Pearl Quakes, Flying West, and each production is very different. There's a different take on how it's done because of the director. So, no, particularly at this point in my life, I'm just going to stay in theater.
No, I love that. I'm grounded and I'm trained in theater, but we have talked about like exploring these other opportunities. But there is something really profound about this live art form and like watching the collaboration come together. So I really do admire how the theater works.
Right. And I understand why younger people are leaving, may leave theater. It's a financial thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, if someone's going to offer you 10 times as much to go work on a film versus a play, I don't get mad at people for that, But for me, because I've also been an educator all my life as well, I've had that balance. So it wasn't like, oh my God, I got to take this show because I got to pay my rent. I knew I could always, my teaching job was always there. So I've been fortunate because I've been able to do two things that I really love, and I've been able to combine them. So
I love that. I'm curious, what has been your most memorable production? And is there any part of your process that you always try to do the same for every show that you're on?
No, for every show is different. It depends on the playwright. It depends on the director. For the most part, I do realistic plays. I don't know. I like realism. I'm sorry. I'm not a big musical person. I will do every now and then I'll do sort of a stylized piece, but basically I love realism. I love plays about history. That's pretty much 80% of what I do. I love working on new plays because a lot of times people go on my website and they'll say, I've never heard of this play because the play may never have another life until 10 years later. But I love the experience of being able to work with the playwright in the room. That's really exciting for me because if I have a question about the play, well, what does this mean? I can just turn around to the playwright and say, but can you explain this to me? And also working on a new play, as the designer, you can have an influence of what, how the play ends up being, or even some of the text. I've done that. I will ask the playwrights like, oh, well, might sound better, since she's walking toward the window or something, maybe she can say this one in reference to life. Like, oh, that's a good idea. Mm-hmm. So I love that. In terms of my favorite play, wow, people always ask me that. I can't say that I have a favorite play. I would say my most memorable play is working on Broadway with Trouble in Mind. I mean, yes, also because it was Broadway, but this was a play. Alice Childress was a friend of mine the last 10 years of her life. And I know that since 1957, she had been trying to get Trouble in Mind on Broadway. Mm-hmm. It took 65 years, but God, I am so blessed to have been part of it, that it, even it took that long, but, her show finally got to Broadway and I was able to be a part of that. So, that has been like the high point of my career. And I love Childress as a mentor and a friend. And I love this play and the fact that it eventually got to Broadway. So that's a high point for me. And also that Charles Randolph Wright remembered to come and, to ask me to do it, because he's been talking about it for like 15 years before it happened.
Oh, I love that.
So I was just so excited about that.
Oh, I love that story.
No, that was the high point of my career. So
hey, speaking of mentors, so you did mention Alice Childress. I know that you also had the ability to be mentored by Shirley Pendergrass, who was a pioneer for Black women, specifically being the first Black woman on Broadway. Yeah. Is there any advice or tips that she shared that, helped you in your blossoming career?
Oh, very much so. She was a great mentor. She helped me pass the union exam. She was one of these people. If she believed in you, and she believed in me during periods where I didn't have any belief in myself. It's like, oh no, you can do this. You can do this. Because Shirley did not like to design outside of New York. She was a New Yorker by heart, and she said, oh, someone called. They want me to do this show, and I can't do it. You can do it. It's like, oh, I can't do anything that big. Oh, yes, you can. Just tell them you're going to do it. It's like, and when I was working in New York, I don't care how small the show was. Well, back then when I started out, they were small shows. I'd say, oh, I'm doing the show. Do you have time to come and look at it? And oh yeah, she would drop whatever she's doing and come and see my show and just give me some great advice. She was the one who made me realize, well, if there's a set on stage with windows and stuff, you got to have light. Something's got to be happening to them. You got to bring that set to life. So I got that from her. And then the whole thing about how do you light Black people? She used to hate that question. She said, look, if you use complementary colors, anything that's going to mix to white, you can light anybody. So I pretty much still use that. Well, I don't want to say a formula, but my facial lights are like, pale ambers and pale blue, so I can mix them. And any saturated colors I use are coming from the back and from the side. So, again, if we're talking about realistic plays, and Shirley was into realism too, so we had that in common. But no, she was great. She was a wonderful mentor. In fact, I'm writing an article on her now.
I was just reading about her, and I was also reading about the complementary colors because I am designing a realism play at the top of the year, and I was like, let me go back to my favorite Black women who have shared so much info. So that's I've always wanted to know more about her.
She made me realize. She said it's not just the faces; you got to deal with the costumes, the hair color. You don't want a dark-skinned person in a Black outfit and a white person in a white. She said it's just things that are going to make the face stand out. Costumes are going to make a big difference. So I learned a lot from her, mainly from her coming to see my shows and giving me feedback. So that's how she worked.
That's nice. Have you been able to discern like a really big difference since you have worked on Broadway and also in like smaller theaters? What is like the major difference? Obviously, Broadway is Broadway, but
Money's always a big difference. One thing Shirley taught me, and I've always taught this to my students, she said, you treat a tiny show the same way you treat a big show. You do your best work regardless. And she always made a point, and she said, you never know who's going to, she said, a lot of people discard doing little shows. And she said, you never know who's going to come in and see that show. I've never forgotten it. And in fact, there were 2 cases where I did 2 small shows and it led to a bigger show. So, no, yeah, I mean, yeah, money makes a difference, obviously. And I mean, coming out of Howard, where we didn't have a whole lot of resources, I've always learned how to do a lot with a little. So, I don't get bent out of shape if I don't have, 200, 300 lights. Well, right. unless the theater has the resources, but, it's like, this is what we have and, I'll make it work.
Okay.
But I treat every show like it's,
it's headed to Broadway.
All the same, I don't do less because it's a small show or whatever.
Okay. I love that. I know that you have the privilege of picking your work now, but has there been any projects in the past where you had to deal with not so favorable team members, and like, what is your approach to dealing with conflict in the workspace, or just in general in your production process?
Well, actually, I've been very fortunate not to have to deal with that, maybe on 1 or 2 occasions, because I will usually, when I'm getting ready to do a show, I will call past designers or past actors I know, and it's like, what is it like to work with this person? And if they say this person is problematic, unless the show pays a lot, I'll still do it. But, I just get through it and just, decide I won't be working with them again.
Okay.
Or maybe a mutual thing. It may work out where we don't get along or whatever. But I really haven't had that happen too much. It may be one person that just wrecks it for the whole company.
Whole group.
And that's how I look at it. It's like, okay, once the show is done, I don't have to work with this person again. But, I haven't had a whole lot of issues with that. Maybe 2 or 3 shows, where there was a real issue.
Oh, I love that. I'm speaking that for my own career. I want that. As coming down to like our last couple of questions, as the entertainment industry and specifically kind of theatrical lighting expands in a lot of different places, where do you see Black women taking the industry, and kind of what do you hope Black women will contribute to the field?
No, I hope, I mean, I know you're going more into multimedia and probably less theater. Is it you who wants to do immersive theater?
Yes.
No, there's another young lady who wants to do immersive theater, which I think is great. And I think it's great to explore all these different areas. I know somebody who's interested in doing hotel atriums. That's an interesting, there's a need for people. Concerts, there's a young woman on our Black Facebook page, I don't know if you've noticed her, Noelle, who is strictly doing concerts, and she's doing it very well. So I'd like to see, Black women explore all these areas, and, not just theater. Usually people tend to just, I don't know, I think Noelle wants to stay in concert. I don't think she's really interested in theater. The other young lady who's interested in immersive theater, she has no interest in realistic theater, but I think it's good to explore all those areas. So no, and I'm glad to see more and more Black women going to grad school.
Yes.
I think it's good. I would love to see more Black women becoming professors. I always tell people you can do both. I mean, teaching never stopped me from doing what I wanted to do. In fact, it just opened more doors for me. So and now I think sometimes, I know having a person of color who is a professor, we tend to make sure that there are people of color, particularly Black women, in our program. So, a lot of Black kids, I guess since George Floyd, more have been getting into these programs, but prior to that, it was just difficult for Black women to get into a lot of these programs. or a lot of folks coming from HBCUs, because I used to serve on the URTA board, University Residential Theater Association, where people come to interview people for grad school. And also I discussed this at USITT. One of the big issues with many Black kids coming out of HBCUs, they don't get into these big schools because they don't have these stellar portfolios.
Right.
People only look at your drafting. It's like drafting does not tell me you're a good designer. It tells me you can draft. It doesn't tell me you can focus and cue or whatever. So, a lot of schools have been rethinking that. It's like, okay, well, she can't draft, but let me look at her production photos, and okay, she's got a good eye and stuff like that. I would bring in people, who could barely draft, but it's like, bring me some of your shows or photographs that you've taken. So I want to be able to know if you can see, if you've got a good eye.
You have a good eye. Yes. Oh,
yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
My final question is, because we're talking about education, right now, a lot of programs that offer lighting design, that is the only kind of barometer. So do you think that like lighting design is enough, or should we be kind of breaking down our programs and have like a programming field or a master electrician field underneath like the entire lighting sphere?
I think the grad students should do all of that. Like I said, one of the things I loved about Michigan, and they no longer have the MFA program, I had to do everything, which I really appreciated. I had to take a scene design class. I had to take a history of what they call history of decor, history of furniture and stuff. I had to work in the scene shop, and I also had to take history of costume. But one of the things I did do while I was there, I didn't feel like I should be stuck in a theater building 24/7. That was something I decided against. And my professors allowed me to take classes outside of theater. I took a law class, which really benefited me because I met some really well-known lawyers who are out there today. I took a class I took a Black literature class, and all of that was important. So when I came to Illinois with my own program, one of the things that was required, you have to take 3 courses outside of the theater. I don't care what they're in. I don't care if it's swimming or whatever. And it really, I mean, when you go to these grad schools, it's all about connections and meeting other people. And so the students really appreciated that. I just don't think you should be in a building 24/7. I don't think that's healthy. I agree. So a lot of my students ended up taking architectural lighting class, in architectural building, and I had a lot of kids who took geology classes, something I wish I had taken, and just something totally different from what you would study. So I think you need to get outside the building and take other classes.
I definitely agree. I feel I have benefited so much from being able to explore like different departments and just different like ideologies around like performance and just production in general, and not always just being in like an environmental lighting class or just a programming class. So right. I appreciate that.
That's what was happening with you at CMU, right? It was only lighting, but here, yeah.
It's a very small pocket.
Yeah, I don't think that's good. Taking even a playwriting class that can help you, understand a script better, all of that, which is why I took a literature class where you just break down, the story and stuff. But being a good designer is also about being able to understand the script well and communicate, So, yeah.
Any final remarks, any advice to any Black girls out there thinking about exploring lighting, or just any?
Yeah, I mean, follow your passion, and have a mentor. That's so important. I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't have Shirley Pendergrass and God knows how many other mentors. And that makes a difference. Like I say, they help me with my confidence, and yeah, you can do this. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, I can do this, and yeah, so that makes a difference. But follow your passion. If this is something you really want to do, just go for it. And like I said, there's so many areas of lighting. I mean, I didn't have all these different options when I came along. People are working on cruise ships now, and
yes, they are.
there's a Black woman, who's working on a cruise ship over in Denmark. I forgot, somewhere overseas, and she enjoys it. It's something very different.
Right.
There's so many opportunities for lighting.
Oh, I love that. Oh, well, Kathy, thank you so
Okay.
much for talking with me. I always love something.
Well, so you're really a second year. You said they took your first
year. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Full transfer.
At least you'll be done next year.
Yes. Ready to be back in the field.
Wow. The time will go by so quickly.
Yes. I really appreciate this conversation. I always learn something from you when I am able to be in space working around you, or just like hearing the knowledge and wisdom. So I'm really thankful for this conversation and everything that you've offered to the industry.
Right. And I'm so proud of you. So, congratulations. And I know you will do well. And I'll look to see what your next big project will be once you leave California, which will be,
I can't wait.
Will be sooner than later. Yeah.
Yes. We'll be around.
Thank you.
You.